Let's welcome the next speaker, Sergey Pavlovich Roshchupkin, a PhD in physics and mathematics, professor of High School of Fundamental Physical Research of St. Petersburg Polytechnical University, named after Peter the Great. He was born in Ukraine. In 1977, he graduated Experimental Theoretics Physics faculty of the Moscow Engineering Institute in 1983. He got the PhD in theoretical nuclear physics. He worked in the Federal Nuclear Center in Russia. He worked in the applied physics area and the Academy of National Sciences in Ukraine. He was head of the quantum electrodynamics of fields, and he works in the theoretical physics right now in St. Petersburg Polytechnical University. He's author and co-author of over 230 scientific works in the area of cooperation of laser radiation with the substance. He started studying Rerich, Blavatsky, Uspensky, Gurdjieff, Osho, and many others. He works at the university and gives lectures on the secret doctrine by Blavatsky. He gives speeches at the conferences, works on the integration of esoteric and physics that is covered by Blavatsky. He has over 100 articles, quantum physics, esoteric principles, the evolution of the solar system, contemporary esoteric principles, the reconsideration of life, differentiation, fundamental laws of the world, of the nature, and so on. So please welcome the esteemed scientist, professor, head of the International Theosophical Center, named after Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, Roshchupkin, Sergey Pavlovich, and his speeches on the fundamental principles of theosophy and their manifestation in the laws of nature.
Я рад приветствовать вас на 6-м Международном Теософском конгрессе. Значит, цель моего доклада связана с тем, что я хотел бы познакомить вас с современными представлениями физики, которые произошли за более чем 150 лет с того времени, когда Елена Петровна Блаватская использовала научные достижения в основном первой половины XIX века. И вот за прошедшие более чем 150 лет понятно, что многие термины, которые использовала Елена Петровна в своей тайной доктрине, они требуют корректировки. Более того, теософские понятия тоже необходимы.
And more than many philosophical notions. And over and the last thing which I would like to show in my presentation is the fundamental role and function of the new physics notions, modern physics, because the problem of modern physics is quite new.
Я хотел представить высказывание Елены Петровны о том, что самое главное...
And I would like to show Elena Petrovna's presentation that the greatest discoveries of modern science are imagination. This is very important. And the next slide is Albert Einstein, who also said that fundamental discoveries can be made only by way of intuition. Logics doesn't take part in it. Logics is a secondary component which creates the technologies. Now, Elena Petrovna Blavatsky notes that the 7 universal principles here, as usual, inside them we cannot say very much, but the 4 lower principles.
Илая-центр, я более подробно буду останавливаться в дальнейшем, они, собственно, и создают планы бытия. Я тоже хочу сказать, что я не касаюсь в своем докладе планов сознания. Сознание, бытие, конечно, это неразделимые вещи. Вся у нас природа живая, но в силу наших представлений, вот вчера о Сензаре говорил у нас здесь докладчик, он тут присутствует, и он сказал, что в сензарском языке одновременно интегрирован этот язык.
Everything. They show the language, the form, the sound. So you can imagine at which level our ancestors could communicate. Most probably this ability will come back to us, but later. So I will dwell only on the planes of being.
Это
The first thing I will are the fundamental discoveries which have been made in the 20th century. In the 20th century, quantum electrodynamics and the quantum theory of field have been created. And the most important thing that was created in them is a rediscovery of the knowledge of the ancient civilizations. What is interaction and how elementary particles interact? Basically, how we interact with each other. What happens? The first time that this notion was introduced, so-called virtual particles, the quantum theory. The vertical particles are a different type of particles. In the quantum particles, the laws of conservation of energy and momentum are not referred for these virtual particles. And this is how vertical particles appear. They cannot be registered by any macro devices. Therefore, they kind of exist, but at the same time, they are not there. Many people say, oh, you can invent whatever you want, anything that doesn't make sense. But basically, these notions were how micro theories were developed on. And this macro apparatus helped forecast many physical notions which have been experimentally proved. Even more than that, all the modern techniques, modern devices that you use, smartphones, TV, high precision connection, are all based on these principles. So we cannot just ignore this. So the correlation between the energy, impulse, and mass of the body is how it happens. And we can, they're basically equal. So the mass of elementary particles is determined by measuring the energy and the impulse. For virtual particles, these laws of conservation are not followed. So there's an inequality. And these virtual particles can be very different. Which do we know today? Tachyons, or ultralight particles, quarks, or subatomic particles that make up baryons, protons and neutrons. The transporters of strong interactions, or gluons, which exchange the quarks in atomic nuclei, magnetic chargers, and so on and so forth. There is an unlimited number of virtual particles. Due to introducing the notion of virtual particles, the structure of elementary particles became understood. Here's the structure. And there's a certain singularity inside, or according to ancient philosophical understanding, Liar Center, which is surrounded by clouds of singularity. And when there is an overlay of these virtual systems, an interaction gives birth to force of interaction. Physicists have shown the hierarchic structure of the world. And this hierarchic structure has been noted by Helena Blavatsky in her secret doctrine. These are planes, subplanes, etc. This is the same from the physical point of view. The notion of virtual particles has led to the fact that we have rethought the notion of physical vacuum. It is not an emptiness. It is an ocean of virtual particles. Modern physics uses these notions in calculating different physical effects. And this ocean of virtual particles is basically, from the physical point of view, it is these more narrow planes which we directly at the physical plane cannot perceive. But they are the ones which create all the physical properties of our world. And now modern physicists have used many notions such as the charge, for example, the electric charge. You are well familiar with this. An electron has a negative charge, the proton has a positive charge, etc. Now the notion of charge in modern physics is a total riddle for us. It's a mystery. based on the structure of an elementary particle, lie center, or bare particle, which has no properties, it is surrounded by clouds of virtual particles. We can make a suggestion, we can suppose that the charge of any particle is an integral effect of a specific type of interaction carriers. For an electric charge, these are virtual photons. For strong interaction, it is gluons. For weak interaction, W bosons, etc. It's very interesting and quite mysterious, the hypothesis of mass. Mass is very different from other charges. It is different in that the mass has two properties. The property to resist changes of speed or an inert mass, and also gravitation mass, so it gets attracted to other ones. Basically, the nature of both properties is as yet unknown. In 2012, in the Large Hadron Collider, the so-called Higgs boson has been discovered. Scientist Peter Higgs in the 1960s supposed that the basis of creating the mass is a certain field, the Higgs field, which creates the mass. Everybody was happy and applauded, but in fact, Higgs and the boson explains only the inert part of the mass, but not the gravitational mass. And therefore, these notions cannot be separated, inert mass and gravitational mass. It's a combination. And it's owing to these two properties that the universe is stable. And that is how it works. So, in fact, the inert mass always prevents resistance of speed. There is the fall of inertia. You felt this always when moving in a car that goes faster or in an airplane. So this inert mass always appears due to the universality of the area of the space. And the law of preserving the impulse creates the inert mass. And the law of the gravitational mass shows that there is the law of preserving the energy, which is related to gravitational force. There's the principle of equivalence of inert and gravitational masses, which is used by Albert Einstein when creating the relativity theory. Now, taking into account all of these ideas, we can suppose that the notion of mass as an inert, both inert and gravitational, is related to the universality of space and time. And if there is something damaged, it shows the symmetry between space and time. Another very important thing that I would like to draw your attention to is the notion of symmetry. We know that our world has practically symmetric structure. We see symmetry in nature. We are also to some extent symmetric. We use symmetry in architecture, in art. All of this is widely known. Also, the notion of symmetry is definitely used in science. There was a lady by the name of Madame Noether, a German lady, in the 20th century. Back in 1918, she proved a theorem that says that every continuous symmetry of the physical system is connected with some conservation law. It was a unique discovery. Why? Science should have certain laws of conservation. And these laws enable us to solve very many practical purposes. And basically, nature is practically symmetric. As I have already noted, the symmetry or uniformity of the space leads to the law of preserving impulses. The fact that time flows practically uniformly, time is uniform, it leads to the law of energy preservation. What distorts the symmetry? It is interaction. If time were practically uniform, there would be no force of gravitation. of course, it is not uniform, maybe just a bit. When symmetry is violated a bit, there's the notion of desymmetry. Our nature is desymmetric. This is an interesting picture I would like to show you. It is Egypt, Luxor, statues of the pharaohs. And there was a study that showed that the face, in this case the pharaoh's face, has ideal symmetry. The left and the right sides are totally symmetric. What does this mean for us? It means that the time of life is eternal. There is no time. Life is not, doesn't have an end. Human is not totally symmetric, but asymmetry creates finite time. And here we cannot help but remember the monograph of our great theosophist Vladimir Bakanov, Eternal Time God. It is the time of gods. And this is portrayed in architecture. In theoretical physics, there is the notion of spontaneous violation of symmetry. When does this happen? It appears when, due to the fluctuation of vacuum or breaking down inside. So there are more narrow subplanes which lead to distortion of symmetry, spontaneous symmetry breaking. And it's practically differentiation, the notion of differentiation in theosophy. These notions are practically similar. So look, if we introduce a certain parameter which characterizes a symmetry of the system, the parameter alpha s, which varies from 0 to 1, and if this parameter is equal to 0, there's symmetry. Similarly, we need to introduce the alpha s parameter. So if alpha symmetry is 0, and here's total antisymmetry, and these parameters can never be 0. They can be close to 0, but they never actually equal 0. Now their sum always amounts to 1. The nature of these parameters is determined by different planes. The symmetry parameter, alpha s, is determined by the symmetry of this plane of being. Now the antisymmetry parameter is the influence of the nearest subplane or the nearest plane on the state of the physical system. It is the impact of the nearest planes or subplanes to our physical plane which creates asymmetry, creates movement. The world is dynamic due to the influence of these antisymmetries. This is what happens in the world. Total restructuring of the whole civilization. And this is what is going on in physics too. We are now in an era when the antisymmetry parameter is increasing and symmetry is decreasing. There's a total restructuring, but the sum always amounts to 1, and that is important. Now the next sub-session, I would like to fantasize here. And here we go into the area of fantasy. And I would like to base on Blavatskaya's words about imagination. So I'm fantasizing. They say that what happens on the higher plane of being, it's largely due to fantasy. So I will describe my fantasies to you now. Earlier, we formulated the main principles of philosophy. Fahat is the fourth principle of philosophy, which is the multidimensional space-time, the source of energy. In order for you to understand me better, I would like to say, in modern physics there are two notions. There is the notion of field and substance. Substance is everything that has a mass, and the field does not have a mass. In fact, both the substance and the field have properties of both particles and waves, the corpuscular wave mechanisms. But there is a very powerful difference. Is there a mass or is there no mass? Now, forehead is the substance which has no mass. And this, it is the eternal light, is the pre-light. It's a universe source of light and time. Starting from another plan of pre-image, here's the first plane which we can speak about. On this plane of pre-images, this is where the prototype of multidimensional space and time is created by Fahad, as well as a prototype of a single field and a single element. Going down to the lower plane, the fifth, the plane of being, reason and creativity, at this level, already multidimensional space and time are created. Basically, the cycle starts, as well as a united field. Already here, primary quantums, A quantums, are created, as well as primary united elements. Going on to the sixth plane, the plane of formations, further differentiation of the uniform space and time happens, and the differentiation of a united field and element. This united field, which was created at the level of reason and creativity, it's the element of theoretical physics, which is all based on. Einstein tried to create a united theory of a field, and now there is just one unity when we have the electromagnetic weak and strong interaction together. This is one field which is created on the fifth field. And on the seventh plane, on our physical plane, there is a further differentiation, ethereal and chemical. One of these is our time in which we live, our universe, which besides our universe, there's a large number of others. Then we also have four types of interactions. The next issue is the manifestation of Akasha. Manifestation of Akasha. It is a spiritual substance which there is an absolute space which is created by eternal thought basis. And at this fifth plane of reason and creativity, primary quantums can give birth to A particles. So this is a substance and anti-substance. It is not exactly the matter that we have on the physical plane. And on this fifth plane, the A particles and A quantums are created. On the sixth plane of being, K particles and K quanta are formed similarly. It is matter of creating. And on the seventh plane, we have the ethereal particle and quanta, which have not yet manifested, or we cannot as yet observe or study them by modern science. As for the chemical subplane, is what we have at the modern level of development of our universe. Now, finally, or almost finally, what I would like to tell you about is a fundamental discovery which was made at the end of the 20th century about the fact that our universe consists largely of dark matter and dark energy. Here's a graph which shows for our galaxy how is the speed of the solar system or the star system, how does it spread out when irradiating from the center of the galaxy. You know that moving away from our sun, the speed of the planet gradually slows down. Why does it happen? Because the mass is in the sun and the gravity decreases. The formula is 1 divided by r square r. And this here are the stars in our galaxy. Now the technology that appeared owing to modern parts of quantum physics enabled us to determine the speed of star systems. It practically does not change. Now, why? Because maybe there is a certain substance that takes part only in gravitation interaction, but we do not see it. It was called the dark matter. Apart from this, we measured the speed with which the star systems are moving away at the periphery of the system. And it increased as if there is certain anti-gravitation. Now this substance, which pushes apart the solar systems, the star systems, it was called the dark energy. The dark energy and dark universe is nearly 95% of all the matter in our universe. Now what we know is 5%. Congratulations. We have come back to the fact that we don't know anything. We're back to the beginning. Here is another hypothesis which might help explain this. When creating quantum mechanics and the quantum theory in the relativist way by Paul Dirac, it was for the first time that the state of particles with negative mass has been explained. Nobody could explain it before. Dirac's equations show that there are two types of electrons. It can have positive and negative mass. Particles and antiparticles, as he called them. His conclusion was that when they come from vacuum, when an electron with negative energy comes to our world, it turns into a positron. A particle with positive energy, but opposite charge. It's a twin of the electron, but it's an antiparticle. Now, if we use these ideas, we can suppose that at the ethereal plane, by way of birth in two ethereal gamma quantums, there are particles and antiparticles being born. Some have a positive weight and others have a negative weight. As their weight is different, positive and negative, they will do what? They will push each other away. Only similar masses are attracted to each other. These push each other away. So they are pushing each other in opposite directions. And I won't explain the reasons, but I can explain. The time for them flows the other way. They are moving backwards in time. So during the birth of such particles and antiparticles, the process will very soon change. One part goes to one side of the huge universe, the other to the other side. This one goes to the past, and this one goes to the future. So about 14 billion years ago, our universe was born. The mass becomes huge. The density of the mass aims at eternity, towards eternity, and the so-called Big Bang happens. Similarly, 14 billion years in the future happens a big anti-bang. That's in the mirror universe. Right changes for left. And this is what happened. Expansion of the universe and anti-universe. By the way, this model explains why in our universe there's practically no antimatter, because it gets into our universe very seldom. That's a problem for explanation by modern theoretical physics. Then they expand, and what happens? This one goes from the past to the future, this one from the future to the past. And there's a certain time when they touch upon each other, and it leads to the particles pushing each other. And this effect started being manifested. Experimental data shows about 5 billion years ago. And the borders of this pushing leads to the fact that the universe starts moving at a higher speed, and also the star system of the galaxy moves with a higher speed. This model requires further development. My goal was to familiarize you with modern understanding of theoretical physics and to show that theosophic principles can have a huge heuristic force and can help advance not only in the area of physics, but also in all areas of physics and other issues.
Thank you so much. As per usual, you are great, and the concept of the physical vacuum as the law of the material world has been explained by you very clearly. The vacuum as the multifaceted world of the molecules, and based on your report, we can say that you've confirmed the universal principles, and it's a real breakthrough. If symmetry means the stability in the nature, then we can conclude that during time, with the time, it cannot create any stability. Everything is changing. And the hypothesis that you've offered of the simultaneous creation of a universe and anti-universe, it confirms the idea of cycles, when the cycles are taking place simultaneously, and when the periods of pralaya are in line with the periods of manvantara. It's a very interesting thought. Thank you very much for your discovery. And also I'd like to mention that you said that Elena Petrovna Blavatsky says that we need to think about and or fantasize about what is going on in the higher planes. Elena has never said that, or rather, she said, let's imagine what is taking place there. And in order to learn about that, we can look at the physical world. This is what happened when it wasn't manifested. So the secrets disappear once we clear up some of the notions. So thank you very much for your thoughts. It will be of significant importance for further studies, and it will be interesting not only for the delegates who were able to come here to Nizhny Novgorod, but also to the guests who joined us live.